of us are ex-big leaguers, so, that's the way life works. I
We're
think
ex-big leaguers. We're all
I know.
ex-big leaguers in
I'm
our own
just, I'm
minds.
just, you know what I'm saying. So, and I was joking, obviously, but I do think in now from a business perspective, um, I do think from a business perspective, you just want, this is what we've talked about since the beginning of getting together, which is analytics versus eyeball test. You kind of want every opinion and every aspect represented in the room. And why not have that? So it doesn't say get rid of the player aspect. Like Tony probably brought something to the table, something like you would bring to the table. But Michael Weiner and then the guy that's in there now, right? Attorneys, probably labor lawyers that know a lot about contracts and negotiations. Why not have those guys in the room when this is, going to be one of the biggest probably negotiations of,
Yeah.
the near future, I guess.
No, I think you kind of nailed it. And if you haven't noticed, if you're listening to this podcast and you're still one of our fancy, loyal, diehard subscribers, I am Geoff Blum, 14-year Major League Baseball veteran, and going into my 14th season as a broadcaster, believe it or not, I have
Ugh.
been fully institutionalized in the game and industry of baseball. And my good buddy David Tuttle across on the West Coast, we are still friends. I did a live the other day with my wife. We were signing some baseball cards that I had from 2018-19 sent to me. So cheers on getting those back out. But somebody in the live chat said we need a wellness check on Tuttle. And what a lot of people don't know is that Mark Ramos, our producer, and we do give wellness checks to Tuttle every once in a while. And he is doing fine. No blown quads, no knee replacements, no hair
Funny.
transfusions. He is doing fine and dandy. The hair looks as good as it ever has. But
Uh, thank you.
I know we
Thank you
we
for
can
the
check up
wellness
on each
check.
yeah, we can check up on each other a little bit later. But what you're kind of alluding to, and if you haven't understood the conversation to this point, man, the second cup of coffee's kicking in, boy. I'm feeling good. Is the fact that we're talking about the labor negotiation. And I think at the tail end, before I cut you off to introduce ourselves, allow me to reintroduce myself. uh,
My name is.
is the fact that you mentioned that this is going to be, Kurt Flood was a legendary arbitration case back in the day that allowed for free agency. Marvin Miller was the union rep at the time when that went down. There's certain people throughout the course of labor negotiations, whether it be in business. What do you got there? You got Marvin Miller's book. Look
Yep.
at you. I
Marvin
mean,
Miller's
on
book right
cue.
there up
On
right on the
cue.
bookshelf. What do you got
It's
going on?
incredible. That's how
Huh.
good you are. But I agree
Anyway,
with you
sorry.
with the last part you said before I cut you off was this is going to be, I mean, for baseball senses, it's going to be hell on earth because it is going to be scorched earth between already the owners can't stand each other with what they're doing to each other. It's exposing a lot of cracks in their relationships. And then there is obviously a fissure in the relationship between players and owners in that CBA. And I think the biggest thing is going to be that I don't know what you want to get into first because uh, Tony Clark is no longer the head of Major League Baseball's Players Association. And do you want to elaborate more on that before we go into having a guy like Bruce Meyer, who is a labor lawyer, who's now the interim head of the Major League Baseball Players Association? Because things got kind of saucy.
Well, I'll just say the Tuttle wellness check is great. Obviously, Blum and I have been doing this a while, and we're hoping to get on track a little bit more. David Tuttle here, 9 years of professional baseball. Blum always says Team USA, which we're going to get into with hockey, but that was a special time, right? Making Team USA when they didn't have the pros involved. Maybe we get into the World Baseball Classic as well. I think we
Ooh,
talked the last podcast that we kind of spliced together. I did a little bit, you did a little bit, and we talked about Kyle Tucker's contract. We can table the Tony Clark thing. I read a really interesting article about Tony Clark and Anscape about just how they needed more from a guy like that who could have been this, pillar of, being an African American leader in the US and all this stuff. But this guy was more upset, not that there might have been some dalliances to say to say it politely, but that
word of the day. Ding, ding, ding.
that whole yeah, but that whole business thing thing where they were funneling money through. He got really into that. So anyway,
I was going to say,
I
it's easy to
think,
point to the sister-in-law, but I'm with
yeah,
you. The financial issue
yeah,
was probably the one
the
that like
financial
locked
issue.
everybody in on him.
Right. And we kind of say this in California with politics, it's not how liberal you are or how, blue or red you are in California. At me personally, it's
Hmm.
how you balance the budget. Like, are we running our
Oh,
country or our state like a business? And I think, if we really wanted to do that, it would be a whole nother podcast about the labor strife, but also, are you going to run the business effectively, professionally, and represent your union in the best light possible? And I'm not sure they were at that point. But when we chimed in, we were saying that, and I've learned this in the world of business now, is you and I've talked about analytics and eyeball tests, and what you want in that room is somebody representing not just every side, but every side of each issue. And I think, to go back to the beginning, when Kyle Tucker signed his contract, you and I kind of went back and forth and said that's going to be kind of the linchpin for this whole thing. And then the last thing I'll say about it, and then you can take it where you want, is I heard Michael Lewis talking this week on a podcast about youth sports, but talked about how he got into Moneyball and how he got into a bunch of different little things. But he was saying that it's really interesting when the business, anyway, the business side of all of this is really interesting in the aspect of, like, well, why don't you take it where you want? I'll come back to the Michael Lewis point, because I'm
well, I
going
was
to
going to
get
say,
ahead
you've
of
got
myself. I
plenty
don't
of
want to
time,
do
dude.
that.
We're
I
not
know.
in a rush on this podcast.
Right.
If you need to
So,
get that train of thought going, I will allow you plenty
yeah,
of time to be able to make
there you
that
go.
happen.
Yeah. So we were
But
just talking about having a labor lawyer and a player in the room, and then why don't
yeah.
you take it where you want, and I'll come back to my point about Michael Lewis.
Well, I mean, we can touch on Tony Clark. I know that I was a proud member of the union, and I agree with you in the sense that I thought it was a pretty unique situation to be able to have a guy like Tony Clark, ex-player, Ivy League. I mean, if you have to go there, African American, but he was leading the most powerful union in America. I think it's pretty remarkable what our union has been able to do. And I've been fortunate enough to understand what it was like to be in the union, and I've also been fortunate enough to understand that during my time has benefited me both as a player and as an alumni. Pension laws out the wazoo. I mean, they're maxed out. Benefit plans are amazing. They take a very good care of us while we're in the game. But at the same time, there were things that were mounting up against Tony Clark, and depending on who you talked to, they said they either liked him or they were kind of wishy-washy on him. I don't think there was an overwhelming consensus that said Tony Clark is our absolute 100% leader. But what we were kind of hinting at, before he got fired for infidelities and maybe indiscretion, both personally and professionally, because there's some, financial issues that he's dealing with, that he needs to correct. And they put the interim Bruce Meyer, interim head of the Players Association, in. And that's where the conversation kind of started for us, was in this moment where this will be one of the more highly publicized and polarized labor negotiations. It's kind of nice to have a guy at the front that is a labor lawyer. He was going to negotiate the process anyways. Tony Clark was going to kind of be the mouthpiece of the players and explain things from that sense. But Bruce Meyer is going to be the guy in the room fighting for the players and this CBA that's coming up at the end of the season. And you reference back to Michael Weiner, who passed away way before his time, but he was actually a massive architect of continuing labor agreements for the players without a salary cap. He was amazing at negotiating this. He was amazing at articulating the players' points, both in the arbitration room and outside of the arbitration room, which I greatly appreciated. But now I think we're kind of getting back to that mode, and maybe the players recognize that too, that they need somebody that's a little more stable and understanding, because not only do you have to explain it to the players, you've got to be able to explain it to the public, because that's unfortunately, like we've seen in politics, like you're talking about, and like we're seeing with some of these negotiations in major sports, is you've got to be able to have somebody at the front, in front of the cameras, explaining to the country and all their fans what exactly is going on and why the players are so adamant about not having a salary cap.
Yep, and that teed up my point about Michael Lewis perfectly. So Michael Lewis was on a podcast this week, And he was saying, it was back and forth about, the books he's written or whatever. But he said the premise that he started Moneyball with wasn't the one that ended up coming out after talking to Billy Beane. The premise was, hey, the left fielder's making $375,000. The right fielder's making $10 million. Those guys are on the same team. Do they resent each other in the clubhouse? Like, what the hell is this? The right fielder is standing, 50 yards away from this guy, and he's making, $9.5 million more. And we know a lot about these negotiations and the major league minimum salary and all of that. But that was the premise that Michael Lewis started with. And I do think now that we're talking about Kyle Tucker's contract with the Dodgers and some of these other contracts that have come up, that disparity, even though it's going to be owners versus the players, that disparity, like you said, you need that unified front on the players side. And I do think that might be, I don't know, you mentioned the word fissure. That was the second word of the day, fissure or fissure. And I'm wondering if that's something that they have to get all the fissures corrected on the player side before then they go to the owners and say, hey, we got to do this. Because from the outside looking in, and again, not a contract negotiator, not a lawyer, I would fit more in the Tony Clark category, as would you probably, if we were sitting in that room like, we're just paying attention, trying to figure this out, is what the outside world is saying that they're probably going to have to get to some sort of a salary cap because of, and I'll give you a good example, and you and I've talked about this before, the Dodgers don't really give a shit about the luxury tax anymore. They basically are just blowing through the luxury tax. So if it's a fake ceiling or a fake cap, then what are we doing? And then you add the NBA piece into it, which is now they're talking about teams tanking. The big example was Lauri Markkanen and someone else were on the floor and they were up 22 points and they were 8 minutes left in the game. They never played those guys again in the game. And so again, on the owner side, do these owners all want to win? And I know from the outside looking in, and you have some inside knowledge, some of these teams are not doing, putting their best foot forward or, being, they're being a little bit disingenuous about what their goals are and what they're trying to do. So take that where you want. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say that, being in Southern California where you are. And I mean, when you talk the way you do, all I can think about is damn Arnie Moreno and how he said that fans don't care about winning. And I was just like, what? That was insane to begin with. And then he said, it costs too much to win. And I'm like, if either of those two things come out of your mouth, sell the team, get out of there. Give somebody else an opportunity, because you're in an unbelievable market. And I know this is a little bit of a rant, and this goes back to my kid days. Like, I love the Angels. I love the Padres. I even watched the Dodgers a little bit when I was a kid before I understood that being a Padre would make me hate the Dodgers. But the market for you changed the name to Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim to be able to market your team well enough to create a payroll that would be competitive. And he has made blunder after blunder after blunder. And unfortunately, it's seeping over into Perry Minasian, who's the GM for them, who's actually a pretty good guy inside the industry and smart and knows how to run a team, but he can't. He's literally not being allowed to do what he wants to do. But those are the fissures inside of the ownership side. And I think it's interesting that you bring up there are fissures sometimes inside the player side. But for me, I think that maybe in the NHL, maybe a little bit in the NBA, not in the NFL, but in Major League Baseball, there is an understanding of, and this is kind of a buzzword, trigger word these days, meritocracy. You earn the right to have the contract. And the way the CBA is set up is you've got 3 years of basically base pay. And then once you get after the 3 years, you go to arbitration and you start to get paid. After 3 years of arbitration, you become a free agent. I think those numbers might change a little bit and shrink down to maybe 2 and get them into free agency a little bit quicker, because the average age is dropping, the career span is dropping, and they need to protect players in that sense. And I know you agree on that.
Yeah, well, we've talked about it before with the 10 years. How many guys actually get tenure?
That number's dropping too.
Said, right?
You want to encourage guys to play. Yeah.
Exactly, and there's guys hanging on. I work with a guy who's he'll remain nameless. I could tell you later, but he's basically in his 8th year of service time, and he's now moving on to his 3rd team as like the bench coach or the bullpen coach.
You're trying.
He wants to be one of those. He's just trying to get to the 10 years, and I do think to The 2-2-2 sounds good. I mean, we all have to be open to that. The other thing is guys were doing this before is they were jumping the shark anyway. The best
Mm-hmm.
players, and you know this too, in a clubhouse like the Dodgers, Otani might be the greatest baseball player of all time.
Ever.
And I think
Yeah.
guys can understand that he's going to get paid more. But the difference is that these guys that aren't going to be around that long, like those guys are going to get paid. I guess my point was those guys that were doing the early deal with average annual value. That's it, AAV, right? So you're doing, all right, if I'm going to wait for full on 5-year, 6-year free agency, right, after arbitration, and now I can negotiate instead of getting 400 million, hey, I'll take 200 million now, 2 years ahead of time. So guys and agents and players that realize that the numbers are coming down and you're trying to offset these injuries, and many of this is generational or lifetime changing money, why not do that? But you can also, I think to your point, that's the point you're making, is build that into the structure. Let's build that into the structure where these guys have a little better longevity after the game, and they can, pay for things in their life when they're done with the game, instead of waiting for those guys to get to 6 years. For somebody like me who didn't even get a cup of coffee, trying to get to 6 years would have felt like an eternity, and it would have been great just to make a living doing this thing that you love to do when you're, highly talented at this specific skill.
Yeah, and I think that's where players have to be careful when they negotiate some of these soft caps or even the potential of a cap is, you're going to suppress value, and that's what players don't want to do. They want to continue the market to grow because obviously franchise values continue to go up exponentially. Players' salaries kind of gravitate with it, and that's what you want to continue to do is have both those numbers kind of go with each other. But there's some, Milwaukee's their evaluation continues to go up, but their payroll doesn't match what they're doing, I guess is maybe a decent explanation of what's going on. And that's where the player has to be careful because just take me for example. I was a role player. I 1-year contract to 1-year contract, but I was kind of making that, I was making a reasonable amount of money. I mean, if it was nowadays, it'd be the guys making between probably $5 and $10 million. And if you're the Milwaukee Brewers and you really want to sign a guy for $5 to $10 million, can move around the infield, help your team win, great in the clubhouse, but you have a guy at $750,000 who's a rookie, you're going to take the guy at $750,000 and take the chance because you don't want to spend the extra $4 or $5 million to get the other guy on the team. So that's where I think that you need to bring the floor up with the ceiling. I mean, there's got to be a floor to this thing. And I'm sure owners that even though the Dodgers don't care about paying, $150 million in taxes to teams, they would rather see that money put back into the game in payroll as opposed to back into the pockets of the Athletics or the Rays or whoever's that bottom tier team is. That's the issue.
Yep. So last thing on this, and then we'll move to something else. I just wanted to know, what do you foresee? I mean, are we going to have a strike or a lockout, or is this?
Yeah.
I mean, the negotiation always, even in our lifetime, in 19 whatever, when Matt Williams was leading the league in home runs, and back in, I don't know what that was, 94 maybe.
94. Baggy was MVP halfway through the season.
Right.
I mean, yeah. The Expos were the best team in baseball.
Ooh, the Expos. Who are they? There's a little Netflix documentary on the Expos.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting too.
Yeah, I think probably more interesting for you than most, but very interesting. So yeah, do we see a strike or a lockout, or does it have to get contentious? I mean, I'm so tired. We'll get to this later and some other things that I wanted to bring up, but I'm so tired of the clickbait, I guess, for a lack of a word. So we're going to have some contention, and then they're going to.
Yeah, it went from clickbait to rage bait now. So it's just going to be rage baiting everywhere, whatever that is. But I think that this day and age with the word polarizing and no such thing as bad publicity. I mean, it's going to get contentious. I mean, there's too many Twitter handles or Twitter bloggers. There's too many streamers. There are too many cooks in that kitchen of covering baseball. So there's going to be opinions everywhere, and the opportunity to put my iPhone in front of a guy and go, well, what do you think about this? That's going to be everywhere. So I think it's going to be, you and I will see it as entertaining, where I hope the average fan finds it entertaining because that's all it is. Because what they say outside of that boardroom is not going to be what's being said inside the boardroom. I think that I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail, because if you look at just the economics of professional sports these days, baseball's in a very good spot. And they're kind of come off a World Baseball Classic that's happening here pretty soon. They've got parity. The extra wild card contender has turned out to be a great thing. The pitch clock has been amazing for the game of baseball. The engagement's at an all-time high. You got to take that stuff into account and maybe find a middle ground. But the one thing I hope that doesn't happen is that they go, oh, we'll just continue the current agreement, because that's just a cop out for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we progress in so many different ways, but I appreciate you saying that. I agree with you. I was going to jump to the something else.
Do you think they lock out?
I don't know. I have not gone that far. I do agree with you that so many opinions, so many cooks in the kitchen. You know, we've talked about this. I just don't watch the news. I do want to jump to, I had texted you like that posterized thing I had an example of, but you brought up the pitch clock and how successful that's been. So I think the next topic,
teamwork, baby, teamwork,
should be the challenge. Like, the challenge is something that, I mean, we've talked about this before, because we talked about the bigger base at first base, and we talked about the pitch clock and how we were old school and we didn't like it. And honestly, the pitch clock, we both agreed, has just been ingenious. It's really sped up the game. I think it's made people kind of embrace baseball more. The people that say, oh, baseball's boring, it takes too long. But the challenge is interesting, because I've been watching, obviously we all watch the NFL. We remember, you know, the Des Bryant catch, no catch. We remember the one up in Detroit. Remember that one? That was who was that? Is it Johnson? Big guy Johnson. Anyway,
Megatron.
Yeah, Megatron. So anyway, Megatron put the ball down after he caught it. Like, so my question is, and I've been watching soccer VAR, right? They have, you know, video assisted review for offsides and penalty kicks,
tennis.
It's just right. So they're using it, but I just am still. So
I want to know how you feel about it.
Right,
you're the pitcher. You have to deal with it more than I do as a hitter.
Yes. But I'm right back to where I was with the pitch clock thing, which is, man, I just don't think this is going to be great, because I've seen enough instances of watching it in slow-mo going, okay, that was definitely, you know, they're definitely going to overturn this, or it's definitely the right call. And they come back and they say the opposite. And you're like, the video shows it, and you're still arguing with what the video shows.
Oh,
so,
dude,
so I don't know.
You could pull back on baseball replay. I'm with you on that.
Right. And you and I've talked about this before. So I still think I'm pretty anti, in the sense that, I mean, look, when Livan Hernandez struck out, 19 guys.
Eric Gregg.
and Eric Gregg was back there, like, he was in a hurry. He had a date. Like, that is egregious. And that is something that maybe in the third inning, they could have said, all right, Eric, you know, we're going to take you to get your eyes checked, and we're going to replace you behind the plate.
Step in the box with your hand on your helmet with that game. You're just like, okay, I'm just tapping now.
Here we go. You're going to strike me out. I don't have to swing. Anyway, so as we digress, but I'm a little skeptical of it, in the sense that what we've talked about clearly before is there's a tenor and a theme and a feel to the game. And some days, hey, I got a low strike zone today, right? Glavin's nibbling out there. Glavin's another kind of bad example, good example, but it's like, you know what's going to be called. So if you're going to give him 3 inches off the outside and nothing on the inside, I can get up there. I can do what I need to do. But if you start reviewing plays and the whole tenor of the game and the whole feel of the game is based on this strike zone, and then you go to the replay and finally he paints one inside on the black that the umpire wouldn't give, because he's trying to, you got to, because
his zone's
give and
horseshit.
take. Right, there's a feeling to it. Then you throw one inside and it crosses up the catcher. He does this, but then you go to the box and you're like, "Well, strike 3. Yep, you're out." And you're like, that's the part that gets missed, is there is a tenor and a feel, and you know this better than anybody, to the game.
There's a
and
rhythm.
What the umpire is calling and what he's not. And you start challenging things, that strike zone ends up being bigger, in my opinion, which, hey, that should be great for a pitcher, but you spin a
it's good for the game too. The ball gets put in play more, I think, when the zone's bigger.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know. So I would like to know your thoughts. So it just makes me nervous when you're taking the feel of the game, because, as you know, all right, I know I'm getting a little bit on the outside, but we're not calling anything on the inside. and then he yanks a pitch across the plate, and you're not ready for it. The catcher's not ready for it. He doesn't want it, and he rings you up. So umpires have been known to ring you up.
The catcher boxes it because he can't get to it. Yeah,
right. So tell me what you're thinking about replays when it comes to that, because that's the biggest concern, and maybe that doesn't happen often enough. So I'm a little concerned about that.
No, we're talking about the automated balls and strikes, and I actually, fortunately, was totally ill prepared for this, but I actually have the piece of paper that MLB's handed us as far as rules.
You're not ill prepared.
Just so we can.
I don't have that paper.
Well, I could email it to you. I don't know if that's against MLB policy, but I could definitely email it. But just to give you overview, 2 challenges per team. You could get 100 challenges a game as long as you get every one of them right. As soon as you miss 2. You're out.
Yep, done.
You get to the extra innings, and each team gets 1 challenge per inning. Okay. Whatever.
Yep.
Pitcher, catcher, batter can challenge.
Following the NFL rules, it's just the same, like, right? Whatever.
Once you get into overtime, you do whatever you want.
Right?
You tap the helmet or your hat if you're a pitcher, catcher, or batter. I want to ask you real quick, knowing who can challenge. A lot of pitchers have said that they're not going to. They're just going to entrust their catcher with it. Do you feel that way? Because some of these guys are so violent with their, they're not even seeing the ball cross the plate half the time because they're so violent trying to throw it so hard. Would you have been a guy that would have tried to tap the hat and said, "No, that's a strike"?
I mean, I never even thought about doing it, but I do think. I think it'll be interesting. I would defer to catchers, especially the good big league catchers that you trust. Yeah. Absolutely. I would defer to the catcher. I would say if it's a certain game, then maybe, but I actually think they're going to hire someone. They're going to do the iPad. They're going to be doing what they do on the, on the sideline. They're going to be doing the, I was in the NBA. I didn't even touch him. And they're like, they look to the bench, and Steve Kerr looks down the bench, and they look at the guy. They're like, no, we don't want to challenge it. We don't want to challenge it.
That's the caveat here, is that it has to be immediate. And there was a game the other day in spring training that I was watching. We were actually calling the game. It finished off the game, and that it was obviously a borderline pitch, and the bases were loaded. I mean, it was an ideal time to be able to just, if a ball, no matter how you felt, just tap it.
Right.
Because it was a 3-2 count, bases loaded. Yeah, you're just hoping for the chance. Yep. So it has to be immediate. And he took his time. He kind of looked in the dugout, looked back, and the umpire was like, "Oh, hell no. No, you looked in the dugout. We're not. No."
Yeah.
So it's got to be immediate. Right.
Didn't know
the interesting thing to me is 17 inches is the width of the plate. That will be every single day, every single call, because that is the one thing you cannot adjust on this ABS is the width of the plate. It is 17 inches. You catch a seam on that edge, you'll get the call. But the interesting thing is there's a couple of things. The front, it won't be called at the front of the plate. It's going to be at the midpoint of the plate. So 8.5 inches. See, that's where the pitcher's shaking his head, because if that thing was at the front, you guys would manipulate the hell out of that thing.
Just
you could sink, you could slide, you could
right
cut,
across
you could
the
curve.
front of that. Just catch that. The frisbee right off the front corner.
Yeah, fans know that spin rates are off the charts, but if you told Tuttle that if all you had to do is catch the front of the plate back when he was playing, I guarantee you Tuttle would find a way to spin one to catch the plate, technically be a strike, and bounce it on the plate. I guarantee you he would be able to do that.
Somebody will figure that out. Yeah, well, that's why they do the mid plate. I was a sinker guy. I would work that. Yeah. I would find a way to do. But you could still
just ram that thing down in the zone.
That's what I'm saying. I would just try and throw front foot sinkers, right, to right-handed batters and see if you can't get it off the front of that plate about knee high. Just bury that thing in there. So yeah, you certainly would manipulate it. So it sounds like they're trying to take that out of it. But the 17 inches again makes me nervous, and you would just have to leave that to the catcher.
That's tight.
The catcher has. We go back to the feel. The catcher and the umpire have a relationship, as you know, and it usually either deepens. No. I think that's
with only 2 challenges. I get it, but
no, I'm saying the catcher back there. Okay, the relationship may not be as warm and fuzzy, but the catcher now knows what the umpire is calling, and he knows what's borderline and what isn't, and that's what you were saying. Do you defer to the catcher? He'll know throughout the game, like, oh yeah. That's
he's going
to know that 17 inches better than anybody.
The last thing I'll talk about, which I think is going to be most interesting, is the top of the zone will be 53.5% of the height of the hitter. The bottom will be 27% of the hitter's height. What a lot of people don't know, and you'll learn right here on Endless Blummer, is that they're taking that as a static height. So you walk in, if you're Aaron Judge, you stand at 6'7". That's what they're taking.
Yeah.
When Aaron Judge is in his stance, he might be 6'3". So that's where I think the top of the zone might be where pitchers during the regular season kind of go after to test the limit at the height of the zone.
Yep. Especially if hitters are typically used to seeing like, okay, letter high, let it go. Letter high might actually
because
be
I get my stance and I'm like, letter high, that feels above the zone.
It feels high, right? You're looking for stuff
but
below
if I stand
your
up
elbow.
straight,
But he gone.
Did you see the other day? I don't know if you caught the highlight. It was literally like maybe a day or two ago.
Well, yeah, I've been watching spring training highlights ad nauseum, Blum. I mean, you cannot throw it by me. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, dude. Then you obviously saw the poor umpire in one of those games have 5 calls overturned. To your point about the tenor of the zone, what I'm feeling that day, if I'm seeing 3, if I'm a little hungover and where's the zone today? 5.
Yeah.
If you have 5 pitches overturned in a game, I don't feel like that's good, man. It's not good for pace of play. It's not good for rhythm of the game.
He's going to Double A. He's getting moved down. That's what happened to us. You walked 5 guys in your spring training debut. Dude. You're out of there, right?
Hey, dude, Supreme Court justice and Major League Baseball umpires are the 2 most job-secure jobs ever on the planet.
No, I know they are. But yeah, you don't want 5 overturned calls. But I actually think that speaks to a couple things. One is, yes, he wasn't on his game. But 2 is, he has a feel for the strike zone that he's called as he came up through the ranks, and he's, 10, 15-year big league umpire. Like you said, one of the most secure jobs on the planet. And here he is having to go, oh, I thought that was high. Oh, I thought that was high. He's going to have to now go back to the old drawing board. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, spring training for umpires too, right? It'll be really interesting to see. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. So again, we started this. Let's go back to where we started. The pitch clock is something that I was against, and I think we both came around to go, all right, the pitch clock has been reasonable.
Yeah,
it has been better than reasonable. It's been kind of a blessing in disguise for the game of baseball. This is still, as anything, is up for debate, and I don't know. I'm just not sold on it yet. Especially, actually,
TBD.
TBD. But I think your 5 overturned calls makes me feel like, that's a work in progress.
That's going to add fuel to a color analyst on their broadcast, especially if he's an ex-hitter.
So when I text you, and this is not Tuttle rebuttal, whatever, but when I text you often, I'm looking at Stephen A. Smith highlights on ESPN. They're like, Stephen A. Smith says this, and Stephen A. Smith said this, and I'm like, who the fuck Stephen A. Smith thinks like about any of this? I'm just saying. That's just my reaction, though. Like, I mean, I'm sure I know he's a sports journalist, but
he pops onto my feeds, and I give it the eye roll, but I always end up listening because it's like so preposterous.
See, I never listened to him. I mean, he's a smart guy. This is not a criticism of him, but I'm like, I take that to
he's smarter most often. There's moments where you're like, you don't even know who's on the team, dude.
No, that's true. But I guess I don't mean smart. He's articulate, but that's what I'm saying. So why do we have an opinion? Like if he was a basketball writer to start in Philadelphia or whatever, then he can be an expert in basketball. He's been a writer for years. But why do we listen to his opinion about whether Aaron Rodgers remains a Steeler or goes back to Green Bay or retires? Like, we don't really care. So
he's never worked in a front office. Yeah.
Right. So I say that to carry into this posterization era that we have, because I was watching Wembanyama the other night, and this is the example I have. Wembanyama scored 27 points. He had 17 rebounds. He had 8 assists. But he was on defense, and his back was to the board, and he turned around, and Ant Davis threw one down. Oh, no, it was Durian from Philadelphia. Durian, or the Pistons. Jalen Durian threw one down on him. And basically that you're watching these highlights, and San Antonio's won 10 games in a row. They end up winning the game by 14. They're like, Wembanyama gets posterized, and Durian stares him down. And you're like, who cares? Like, I do not care. Like, I would love to hear your big league manager.
That's the bat flip down by 6. You're like,
right.
It's
right. Bruce Bochy, like Bruce Bochy would not care about that. Like, nobody cares about that. I mean, he would care about the stare down if you're on a losing team. My point is, I like baseball is not that different. Like the bat flip when you're down by 6 or the stare the guy down. I don't understand what we're getting to. This is a little bit of the rant from the old guy. I mean, Wembenyama, they've won 10 or 11 in a row. I think the second year last year they finished last. That guy, Steven Castle from UConn, is unbelievable. San Antonio's unbelievable. I don't even watch the NBA. They have a good shot in their second year with those two guys to go to the NBA finals. And all they put on, the highlights when you go on ESPN.com, or maybe if you're watching the highlights, they have to, Wembanyama gets posterized. I'm like, yeah, he also scored 27, 17, and 8, and they won by 12. Like, what are we doing?
He had a
right?
triple-double.
Yeah.
Like, dude.
Yeah. And so I go back to your first point. You said that you're guilty of clicking on Stephen A. That's what they're looking for. I'm not. I'm like stubborn. I ignore it. I ignore it. I ignore it. And I'm trying to bury my head because I don't think it's a good representation of what high level athletics is anyway. Like these guys are the best of the best, and you're trying to show Wembanyama get posterized. I don't understand it. So take that.
I don't understand it. Well, I understand it because this is the day and age of 15-second, TikTok videos. It's a snapshot. It's a Stephen A. quote. It's wham! It's in your face and it's gone.
Yeah. Right.
That's what's crazy. When instead we're looking at such a microscopic little itty bitty piece of the picture that you start to lose, the bigger picture, which is that's really the only thing that guy has going for him, because he got his butt kicked by the San Antonio Spurs, like most teams are in the NBA. Yeah, but that's the only thing. But you're glorifying moments. You're not glorifying legacy. You're not glorifying sustained excellence. You're not glorifying consistency, because the only thing that we can sell right now is this little 5 to 10 second clip. That's it. And I think that, that's maybe, that's not a good thing, because they're going to remember Wembanyama holding up the NBA title. They're not going to remember him getting posterized.
Yeah, and I think that is it. Yeah, I hope so too. But I agree. The sustained excellence aspect, to take, this better than anybody, getting to the level that you get to. It's, Michael Jordan used to say it, like, you see me holding the trophy and smoking the cigar, but those days Kobe used to talk about, you do not see me like in the gym at 5 a.m. shooting free throws and playing one-on-one and working on this game and working on that game. And I just think I do understand it. Don't get me wrong. TikTok, X, I watch Instagram like anybody else.
Well, I know you do. Yeah,
but you layer that with how much hard work it takes. That's what I always think about. And even my daughter, who's playing, high school sports right now, I see that she takes it seriously, and she, works hard at this and works hard at that. And it's, that's what it takes. That's what it takes. And you don't get upset when you lose. It's the process. I shouldn't say you don't get upset when you lose. If you're busting your butt and doing what it takes, you're going to have some wins, you're going to have some losses. And I just think being posterized or having somebody punk you on the internet, especially when you're a high level athlete, is just, I don't know. We're letting it get away from us. That's all I wanted to say about that. I think we're just letting it get away from us.
In our lives as ball players and as people, you try and limit the valleys, limit the peaks. You obviously want to have more peaks than valleys, but
of course.
At the same time, you're not, you glorify one experience more than another one. You just set yourself up for a bigger valley. And I think that you just try and maintain the status quo. But how about to the point of you're not degrading or anything like that, but you're putting one of your single most notable players, if you're looking at it as an industry, you're putting one of your most notable players and high profile guys in your game on the negative side of a play, just one play. Yep. So is that beneficial to the NBA, or is it just kind of showing you the disparity or how a season goes? I mean, you could take it a couple of different ways, but I feel like, if you're going to get on Wembanyama for being dunked on, go ahead and show the rest of the clip and show him, the 25 other plays where he scored or assisted and helped his team win. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think it's interesting because I'm sure it's a production assistant in the back room putting the highlights together versus like ESPN has a contract with the NBA and vice
Well, you're going to
versa,
get the
where they're
click
trying to promote
from
the
the
game and put the
76er or the Pistons. You're
yeah,
going to get the
yeah,
clicks from the San
yeah,
Antonio fans, and the comment section is
yeah,
going to be like,
yeah,
"Oh, yeah, look at this,
yeah,
look at the final score." You know,
yeah,
it just
yeah.
creates all kinds of
That's what I
havoc.
mean. It just creates a maelstrom. So we'll go from
Yeah.
the negative to the positive. We mentioned playing
USA.
for Team USA was a great honor, especially in Cuba when baseball
David
was such
Tuttle
a
played for
big
Team USA.
in Cuba, which was a lot of
Yep,
fun. And it is
had to
weird
be.
because you can relate to um, international pride. Like you can totally relate to that. It's a whole different thing. I don't know if the World Baseball Classic brings that. Maybe it
It
is. It
does.
does.
No, you'd be surprised.
Okay. Yeah, I know it does for certain teams. I mean, gosh, I played winter ball in Puerto Rico, and the what's the final? Like we had like Venezuela and Puerto Rico and Mexico
The
and
Caribbean World Series.
Caribbean. Oh my God, that's nuts, man.
It
And
is nuts.
so the pride is there for a lot of these countries, but playing for the U.S. in Cuba was a moment I'll never forget. But my question's a little bit deeper than that. Obviously, the USA beating Canada at their national sport, and boy, I mean, we can talk about whether they deserve to win or not. 42 shots to 20 and all of that.
Yeah.
There were some hairy
Woo.
moments, but hey, the scoreboard is
Hey,
the only one that
sometimes it's
counts.
better to
That's
be
what they
lucky
say.
than good, man.
That's right. Yeah, luck is the residue of design, let's say, right? So that you can see the pride, but the comparison 46 years to the day of, 1980
So
and,
good.
the Miracle on Ice and all that. Look, it's all cool, but you and I think have to agree. Like when I went to Cuba as an amateur, we were playing the pros down there. And we were all up and coming trying to get there. The hockey
Yeah.
team in 1980 was a bunch of amateur guys that had all played at Minnesota or Western Michigan, and they came together and they're playing the
Bunch of
greatest
18,
hockey
19
team
year
of
old
all time.
punks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I actually like this in the press conference, but I want to hear what you were saying. Is it was the Jack guy that scored the winning goal, but he said, "Look, it was a battle out there. We love those guys," and he meant Canada, not just Team USA.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, those guys. Half of those guys are brothers on their teams in the NHL. It's a war when we get, yes, we want to win and they want to beat us, but man, there is so much pride having the greatest hockey players on the planet, excuse me, all on the ice at the same time.
Yeah.
So I really felt like he was respectful. I haven't heard that covered in the news, but I really like the end of that clip. So compare 1980 to 2026.
Yeah, a little bit different.
USA won the gold medal, but it's a little bit different, right?
Yeah. Well, didn't they beat Finland in the gold medal game or something like that too? Because I mean, it was the 80s were the whole
Yes.
Cold War, USA
Yep.
versus USSR. So I mean,
Yeah.
there were so many things going on, and then like you said, and I love the movie Miracle because it fired me up. I could have played for that team, again. But you're right in the sense that was a little more triumphant because you had 18 to 20-year-old college hockey guys who didn't know any better. I mean, I can't remember the coach's name off the top of my head. It's killing me.
Herb Brooks.
Herb Brooks. He did such a what I mean, it kind of comes out in the movie, but what was maybe understated in that movie was his ability to manipulate 18 to 20-year-old men into the idea that they could just compete. And then the players obviously took it to another level and beat Russia in the semifinal round to get to the gold medal round and eventually winning it. And interesting fact about the USA and Canada teams, those are the two teams in the Olympics that had all NHL team players
Yep.
on their teams.
That's
so that's
right.
kind of to your point that they understood what they were up against. And it's just amazing in sport. And it kind of goes to the peaks and valleys. Canada played a better game.
Oh,
I mean,
really
it's just, USA's goalie was standing on his head, like they say in the NHL.
Yep.
And he was making every block and knocking everything down. And it just came down to one play where Jack Hughes just happened to be at the right place, right time, made the right move, and found a part of the net to score. So it's just kind of interesting how that stuff unfolds. But it was a lot of fun to watch.
It was. And, it's just hard not to have pride. So I'm glad you are in agreement, though. I mean, it's a little bit different than 1980.
I think it's different playing in the Olympics than the WBC. I mean, there's pride,
Yes.
but the Olympic is pride. Like that's great.
Yes. And that was my point. I think
Yeah.
you do have pride in the WBC, and you get to
You were
play
in a
with these
similar
guys that you.
situation. I mean, with on Team USA going to Cuba,
Yeah.
playing both countries' national pastimes. I mean,
Yep.
that was kind of a big
No,
deal, man.
it was a big deal, but I say it was a bigger deal because we were 19, 20,
Did you
same
understand?
exact thing.
Did you understand that when you were on that team going to Cuba at the time?
Maybe not as deep, but man, we were lockstep. We were like, we didn't have Herb Brooks. We had
Well, sometimes you don't
a
need that. I
mellow
mean, if
guy.
you got guys that are like pushing in the same direction, I mean, you guys understood that you had a job and you all gelled, man.
Yeah, yeah, no, we definitely did. No, it's a great question. I just feel like, yeah, I felt like you hear the national anthem when you're standing in Cuba, and their national anthem comes next, and we played Venezuela down there, we played the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, we played a bunch of teams. Your pride is beaming. You definitely are very prideful. So you like my
Chest
yeah,
out.
I showed that earlier.
How did you get that? What the
I
freak,
bought it.
man?
I bought
You're
it.
the man.
Yeah,
But I
gotta
mean, you
support
hear
our
that
boy at
anthem, I
Ram
bet you
Shirts.
started bowing up. Look at, hey, producer
Yeah.
Mark, if you want to get your Keep Moving Forward sweatshirt, go to Ram Shirts, please.
There you go. That's right. Anyway,
Plug and
and I
play.
did pay for it. I didn't even tell him. But to your point, yeah, you do. We were down there in Olympic Village. They call it Olympic Village. It was the Pan American Games. But yeah, you develop pride. The funny thing is, when we did a little, we did it in Japan as well. You did kind of a friendly series. So we went down to Cuba before the Pan Am Games. So
Oh,
we
wow.
went down there like a month before, and you become friends with the guys on the Cuban team. As a matter of fact, that's Rene Arocha. We
I
were
actually
flying
love
from Miami.
that.
That's when we delayed our flight. He defected when we were in Miami. Rene Arocha, do you remember the pitcher?
Boy.
Yeah. So they're like, what's the holdup? And they're like, Rene's not at the flight. Like, do you remember Rene Arocha, the pitcher?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he defected while we were sitting in the Miami airport.
Dude, that's
Never to
wild.
be seen again. I mean, until he was on a big league uniform.
Yeah.
Oh, but we became friends with those guys. The Cubans were kind of, as you can imagine, envious of the freedom that the U.S. has.
100%.
So the pride was there. I guess that's the bottom line: is the pride was there, and listening to the national anthem when you're, far away from home on foreign soil is. I don't think there's anything that beats that.
Dude, at
And
the
we like
time,
the
you went to
national
a place
anthem.
where no American could go unless they were wearing a USA uniform.
That's right. Yeah. And Fidel
Crazy.
Castro was really happy that we didn't win the gold medal.
Yeah, I was
So,
going to say, well, so were the
yeah.
Cuban guys because, I mean, they probably had family members in places they couldn't find.
That's actually a really good point. So back to the team, back to the
Not
USA
good.
hockey
I'm not laughing
thing.
because that's good. I'm laughing because it's
No, but back
so
to
insane
the US,
that it probably happened.
yeah, the USA hockey thing is yeah. I mean, much different 46 years ago. There is another Netflix documentary that covers Herb Brooks more. You mentioned that. I don't know if you watched that recently. So
I
it's
haven't.
not it's not the Miracle. It's a new one that's good and kind of goes behind the scenes, and it has all the living members of the 1980 team kind of back in Lake Placid talking about the experience and how they befriended some guys. So anyway, yeah, a lot of international pride. I'm
stuff.
glad you saw that. But yeah, the U.S. and Canada had all NHL players on ice.
Yeah.
Doesn't take away our ability to celebrate the fact that the U.S.
No.
won a
Well, I
hockey
think
championship.
I saw a great tweet. I can't remember who it was, and it was, I was just kind of scrolling through this mess, but it said, there's a lot of pride in what the Americans did, both on the female and the male side, as far as winning gold medals in hockey. And the guy said, hockey is the 7th most important sport in America, and we just beat the country whose number one sport is hockey.
Yeah.
And
That's
I thought
right.
that was great. It was just
Yeah.
that last little dig where
Yeah.
you're like, yeah.
Yeah. We do kind of we put a lot of things on ourselves, though, like, the NBA championship is the world championship, and now it is. We have guys from
Yeah.
all over the world. But it's funny, the Super Bowl, here's a stat I read recently, had like 185, 200 million viewers on that Sunday. But I told you I've been watching soccer. So Liverpool played Man City that morning. It was like 7:30 in the morning on, Peacock or whatever, NBC. That game is a regular season English Premier League game, had like 740 million viewers. And you're like, okay, so we do have a long way to go in the U.S. to figure out. Like, we like
Yeah.
to, thump our chest a little bit
Dude,
and say, "Hey, we're,"
you
you
could put
know,
soccer and Formula One numbers together and realize
oh,
that how small our watching and
exactly. Yeah, and it doesn't make me want to watch Formula One more or English Premier League
yeah.
more. I watch it a little bit because my daughter's playing soccer, and actually, what sport is on at 7:30 in the morning when you get back from the gym? Nothing. So,
Yeah.
I turn on the TV instead of being a productive human. I'm
I
watching
love it.
sports as much as I can. So,
Yeah.
anyway, Blummer, we got to keep this thing going, man. It is so good to catch up with you. I
You
don't
don't
know
have to yell at me.
if endless Blummer is the appropriate title, but.
Well, that's why we say endless, because it could come on at any time. You never know.
Is it infinite or in
Sporadic Blummer.
perpetuity? Sporadic. Something like that.
No, it's good chatting with you, man. And I mean, the topics are great. The conversations are always good. It's good to see you, man.
Oh, Astros. What do we predict for the year, right? Spring training. Maybe do that
American
next
League.
time.
Well, all the pundits are saying the American League West is going to be Seattle, and I agree. And I said this. I think I said this on. It was either a podcast or a one of our broadcasts. I think it was some. It was. Anyways,
You're getting old. You can't remember. You've said
I
it
can't.
before. Say it
Dude,
again.
I left my
please.
dog outside and left the house the other day. I was like, oh crap! I left the dog
man.
outside. That was nice. Yeah.
I'm sure Corey didn't remind you.
Oh, well, she did it the next day, so we're both like we're
All
a
right,
mess.
there you go. Yeah.
But I said that it's going to be interesting this season because I believe that month of October that the Astros had a little extra time off was going to benefit them physically, but I think it's going to benefit them mentally too because that was the first time in a long time they watched what happened in October. And I think that they're, as tired, as exhausted as it can be going to the playoffs 8 years in a row. You're kind of like, man, I feel kind of left out of the conversation. So I think there's a little bit of fire in the belly with that. The Seattle Mariners are predicted to win the West again, so it puts the target on their back and takes it off the Astros. And I think sometimes being the hunter is a little more advantageous throughout the course of a 162 game season because you're not taking every loss as hard. You're just saying, okay, that's just a setback. We can make a run and chase down the leader. So I think that they're kind of in a good frame of mind. But as well as I do that even before the 2025 season, championship teams pitch, play defense, get hits, and the fourth is healthy. If they're healthy, they're going to do all three of those things and be okay. They might surprise some people.
Look at you. I love it.
The
I'm glad
eternal
I asked
optimist over here.
No, I'm glad I asked you the question. Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen Yordan Alvarez in a regular season game. It feels like
That's
in
the
forever.
guy.
And that's the
Linchpin.
guy that's you've talked about him for the last 3 or 4 years. Like that guy can hit falling out of bed. So you put him in the middle of the lineup, it makes everything different. We just saw Geoff Kent get in the Hall of Fame, and he said he would not be in the Hall of Fame. He even said it, right? Without Barry Bonds being in the lineup. And I think
100%.
that's, I think that makes everybody better in Houston when Yordan's in the, not
Tuttle?
my Don, right? Isn't that what you say?
Yeah,
Not
not my
Don,
Don.
right?
He's your Don.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, Tuttle, you and I, Mark Ramos is our Yordan.
that's right.
He makes us better.
He does.
Marco. How do you not say polo?
Well, yeah.
Damn it.
Marco, Polo. Cheating.
We
he's
woke him up,
cheating. He's
dude.
out
He
of
had
the
his head
pool.
down on the desk.
He's
He
out
was
of the
passed
pool.
out. He was like,
Fish out of water. Fish out of water.
no touchbacks.
That's funny.
All right. Yep. Good being on, man. Appreciate you.
Yep. Awesome. Good to connect.